Hello and welcome to today's Go on Shaw TV, coming to you from Saskatoon's historic Marr Residence. When we enter this home, you will be taken back in time to the late 1800s when Saskatoon was a much different place. Let's go check it out. We take a trip back to 1885 to one of Saskatoon's earliest field hospitals, and we continue our travel through time as we get a look at a groovy art show.
Creating local TV that matters to your community. Shaw TV, your local voice.
We are taking a trip through Saskatoon's early history as we continue exploring one of Saskatoon's first built homes, the Marr Residence. At the moment, we are in the summer kitchen, a place where the prep and cooking could be done during the summer season without heating the rest of the home. In just a few minutes, we'll learn the significance of this home and the family that lived here. But first, do you ever feel that Saskatoon has too many good plays happening, that it's just too hard to see all of them? Well, as Simon Hyatt tells us, one local company has come up with a way to see 7 shows in one night.
At its best, theater can take you away to a completely different world. In the case of the Shortcuts 10-minute play festival, 7 universes are created on stage in one evening. And even though they are only each visited briefly, it's definitely a case of less being more.
This is just a perfect way to get these. Sometimes stories don't need to be longer than 10 minutes. Sometimes you can achieve all that you need to in that time. And in that sense, I think it's more about like the quality than the quantity of the work.
Short plays that would never be seen really otherwise, not around town here. So it's great for an audience to be exposed to all these different shows, and there's such a variety.
While the plays are short, the festival has grown quickly. Now in its 3rd year, Shortcuts received more than 90 submissions from across the continent from interested producers. In the end, 5 of the 7 selected were from Saskatoon, including Donnie Won't Die, directed by Joshua Beaudry and starring Danny Knight and Blaine Hart.
Grab my arm! All right, all right!
It's really different because we have, we're a small cast, and then all these other shows have relatively small casts as well. But there's, I don't know, there's a weird sense of community. It's really nice, actually. Very, very enjoyable and somewhat comforting.
For Alex Hartshorn, who is typically an actor, the festival also provided motivation to make the transition to writer and director.
I used the deadline for Shortcuts to prompt myself to kind of get the script in a place where it was in a finished state. So it was sort of my personal motivation.
As has been the case with several shows that have been a part of Shortcuts, Hartshorn hopes to transition her work into a full-length play. She says the collaborative and communal nature of the festival has already helped her work evolve.
And you're kind of looking through things into this little tunnel, and so to have those extra eyes to say, oh, actually I noticed here in the story that maybe these 2 things don't quite line up, or what is this moment that you're trying to achieve here? Like, somebody else can bring those perspectives into your rehearsal space.
Shortcuts runs at the Refinery Friday and Saturday night at 8 p.m. and Sunday afternoon at 2. For Go on Shaw TV, I'm Simon Hyatt.
We are sitting inside one of the first homes ever to be built here in Saskatoon. It is the Marr Residence. Joining me right now is Della, and she is the chair of the Marr Residence Board. The Marr Residence has such a rich history here in Saskatoon. Can you tell us a little bit about the Marr family?
Well, the Marr family consisted of Sandy Marr and his wife Margaret, and they had 5 daughters at the time. They were living in Winnipeg, and Mr. Marr saw an advertisement in the local newspaper promising lots of money, prosperity, lots of land cheaply. So he decided he would pack up his family and come to Saskatoon. Now, he was a stonemason, so he thought there's probably a lot of money I can make here. So He packed up his family. They took a train from Winnipeg to Moose Jaw, because at that time, of course, there was no train to Saskatoon.
And so they arrived here in Saskatoon, and what did Saskatoon look like around that time? And of course it was the late 1880s.
That's correct. It was actually 1884. There were a number of tents and a lot of bald prairie.
Interesting.
It was nothing that they had seen advertised, so it was a bit of a shock for them.
Absolutely. And of course they lived here for many years and eventually moved to Prince Albert, where Mr. Marr passed away. But we are here sitting inside of their home. A very cool aspect that this is one of the first homes built here in Saskatoon. What can community members get up to when they visit this location on 11th Street?
They can experience the umbrella that I showed you and hear some of the music from 1913. They can see some vintage items, one being a wedding dress that's from 1872.
Okay.
And just experience, you know, the significance of a house that has lasted from 1884 to now.
Now you of course do also have events and different gatherings here at the Marr Residence. You have some coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your plant event?
Sure. In May, on the 15th, we have mini roses that we're going to be planting into some colorful tin pots that I have found, and then people can take them home. And then in June, we're on the 5th, we are having a open house with volunteers. And so if someone's interested in coming in and finding out about the house, maybe getting involved, that's the day we're going to do that.
That's a very good point. How important are volunteers to this Marr Residence?
They're extremely important because we always need someone for interpreting, for helping around the house. They're invaluable.
And of course, you need volunteers to do tours throughout this house, and we're going to be meeting Sue in just a little bit for our tour. I'm excited for that. Stella, thank you so much. We have a packed show for you today, so you definitely want to stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.
We're there to bring it home. Shaw TV, your local voice.
Later on the show, we check out styles from the late 1800s and find out how Switch Medical Center is bringing value to Saskatoon's core neighborhoods and to student education.
Thank you.
Thanks to your support of the Warriamps Key Tag service, anything is possible for child amputees. All of our artificial limbs, all of the resources, the seminars, the emotional support, having a positive attitude, all of that is from the Warriamps. Thanks to your support, the Warriamps are changing child amputees' lives every day.
One of the world's most stunning exotic plants has grown into the heart of Maxine Remy. Remy immigrated to Canada from New Zealand and brought with her an affinity for the rare, delicate blooms.
It's the flowers. They're such beautiful flowers, the colors, and they last such a long time.
Recent mass production of orchids by plant growers has made them popular. The Phalaenopsis is the most common.
A lot of people really like them, but I think a lot of people are sort of afraid to grow them because they think they're so fragile. This is healthy, but it's very wet, this moss.
Remy is now out to debunk the myth that orchids are difficult to grow. She's sharing her experience with a group at the local library.
So in the wild, you'd find that on the ground, not up in a tree. If you're repotting them, they'll probably have finer medium.
There are many questions. The most common is how to keep your orchid alive. Orchids are different than most houseplants and have a unique soil base and watering regime. Remy says it's best to remove the moss from store-bought plants and repot them in clay balls.
depending on the size of the root on the orchid, like if it has quite thick roots, you use a thicker mix to grow it in. If it has fine roots, you'd use a finer medium like that. So you choose that way.
Remy got her first potted orchid in 1997. Since then, she's gathered different types from all over the world. Today, she has over 70 plants.
There's about 1,400 different groups of orchids, so it's a really big family of plants. So this is just a very small group. Like even the lady slippers orchids that we have around here, that's an orchid as well, and the vanilla plant is an orchid.
And some of them were orphaned orchids.
And some people have given them to me to look after, and then they sort of decide they don't want them back, so I have a few that way too.
Orchids do best when watered once a week with a fertilizer. They should also be misted every other day.
See, this is healthy, but it's very wet, this moss. If you buy it in this moss, you should repot it every year.
Remy acquired most of her rare orchids from the Saskatchewan Orchid Society. The nonprofit organization provides a forum for members to share knowledge.
Sort of like this.
Remy recommends serious growers take advantage of the Society's offers from other countries. For Go, I'm Lisa Rism.
In 1885, the Marr Residence was transformed into a field hospital. We are standing inside the room that has been recreated to show you what it would have looked like throughout this entire house, having hospital beds set up and doctors treating wounded soldiers. Joining me right now is Sue. She, of course, is a volunteer with the Marr Residence, and she also does a lot of the tours throughout this house, so she's the perfect person to talk to. Why is it so significant that this Marr Residence, very close to the river, was set up as a field hospital in the late 1880s?
Well, the original plan had been to have a field hospital in the field near Batoche, but they realized at the time that there would be no support services for that, whereas if they had it in the town of Saskatoon, it wasn't even a town at that time, there would be people living here that could support the field hospital. The women of the community baked bread. The men of the community carried stretchers and did scouting for the troops, because of course the troops and also the people in charge of the troops didn't know the territory at all. This was all new country to them. So they really relied on the people of the town site. So that is why they decided to set up the hospital here. They picked this house and two beside it because they were the closest to the river. And they were transporting the wounded soldiers by boat, and they could carry the wounded quickly up the bank and into the house.
Very, very interesting. Now, we were chit-chatting a little off camera. You were teaching me a bit about history. Battle of Batoche, can you explain to us how that erupted and who was involved in that?
Well, the Métis people were at Batoche, living at Batoche, wanting to hold on to their land, but the government was surveying the West in 1885 and earlier. They wanted the land for settlers. They wanted farms and they wanted settlers to move here. So they wanted to take the land away. When you have something you own and you don't want to give it up, then you decide you're going to fight for it, and that's how it began.
Now, there is so many different artifacts in this room. I want to touch base on a few of them. Right behind me here is a soldier's uniform. Can you tell us a bit about this?
This was the uniform that the soldiers wore here. Of course, the battles occurred over a period of time in May. So given the weight of the coat, which is a heavy fabric, it would have been handy because they could have had some cool nights, as we know. The nurse's uniform is typical of the nurses that were here. They came from Winnipeg, and the most famous nurse was Nurse Miller. She was well known to many of the soldiers, and we have poems and stories, things that were written for her by some of the soldiers that were here are still in the archives.
And interestingly enough, when I was doing a little bit of research before coming here, I believe I read that during this time was the first time that nurses and females were welcome into the military. Is that true?
We have some research on the first military nurses in Canada, and yes, this was one of the first places that they could, well, of course, in Canada, that they could be.
That is pretty fascinating, isn't it? Wow. And before we wrap up here, is there anything else that you really want to point out? Because, of course, we could be here for hours learning all about this.
Well, I don't know if it might gross people out, but what's
Nope,
the most
I like it.
the most famous thing on our school tours is the bone saw, which was donated to the house by Lauren, who you'll see a little bit later. She had gotten it for a project she was doing on the hospital for the Youth Heritage Fair, and this was purchased in Saskatoon from an antique store. So who knows, it might have been used in the Resistance.
Wow, this is fascinating, Sue. There is so much to learn here at the Marr Residence, and Sue did mention it. Lauren is one of the youth volunteers with the Marr Residence, which is always great to see younger people getting involved in the history here of Saskatoon. We'll be right back after the break with Lauren, and we get to dress up a little bit, so you definitely don't want to miss that. We'll see you after the break.
It's where you live. Shaw TV, your local voice.
We're taking you back in time to the early 1900s on today's show as we learn more about Saskatoon's historic Marr residence. Interestingly enough, this is a picture of one of the Marr daughters, and in just a few minutes we'll learn more about the traditional clothing worn during this era. But before we can play dress up, let's take a look at a local art show that is also taking its audience back in time to a more groovier time. Simon Hyde has more on the Mini-Me Show.
Artistic inspiration can be found virtually anywhere.
It can come from anywhere. It can come from a joke, or it can come from something sad, or it can come from just an experience that you've had that triggers an idea.
But the idea for the latest show at the Artists' Loft in Saskatoon came from perhaps the most unlikely source. A show at the gallery last year featured smaller works, and owners Denise Collette and Cheryl Tuck-Talon looked for ways to make it larger.
I don't even know what this is. This sort of thing ain't my bag, baby.
Cheryl and I talked about how maybe we should involve some bigger pieces so that it kind of hits the different wants of people. So I said, well, we could do a really big one, and then Cheryl says, yeah, and then we could do small ones, and then it would be like a mini-me. And then I'm like, oh, that's funny.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
The theme worked well for Tuck-Talon, as she typically does a smaller study before doing a larger piece.
Other artists did a large signature piece, and then they would use that as inspiration for doing smaller pieces or their minis. And some paint in series, where they will just do all sizes and that in the same series.
And several titles for the paintings were also inspired by elements from the Austin Powers movies.
I looked up a whole bunch of quotes, giggled a lot, and then a few of the quotes triggered some ideas. Dr. Evil is surrounded by everybody, so I called this painting Surrounded, and the quote was,
Why must I be surrounded by frickin' idiots?
it was a good lighthearted show to work on, and I know that all the other artists were giggled a lot too, and we gave them some suggestions.
But Tuck-Talon admits only one of the titles she chose can be repeated on television.
Whoop-de-doo! But what does it all mean, Basil? And I used that as a title for one of my very kind of mysterious, whimsical, ethereal landscapes. What does it all mean?
The piece is one of 7 paintings being auctioned off as part of the show, with money raised going to the Saskatoon Symphony. Bidding will happen both at the show and online at artistloftstudio.com/auction. The other works at the show will be for sale, and the variety of sizes make them accessible to everyone.
So they may have a huge vaulted ceiling that they're looking for that big signature piece. We have that. But they may, otherwise, they may just want a little pop of color. They're collecting a particular artist. They really don't have a lot of room anymore, but they would just like one more piece, or they see something they like.
The show starts Friday with the opening reception from 5 until 10 and continues Saturday from 10 to 5 and wraps up Sunday from noon until 5. Admission is free, and attendees are encouraged to get into the spirit by wearing their best 60s garb.
We take our art very seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So with that approach, we feel it's okay to laugh while you're looking at art and to have some fun with it. And you'll probably relate to it more, and you'll probably enjoy it more.
The Artists' Loft is located at 617 Main Street. For Go on Shaw TV, I'm Simon Hyatt.
Groovy.
We are learning a little bit about the early history of Saskatoon. Joining me right now is a youth volunteer with the Marr Residence. Her name is Lauren, and she's only 13 years old. She's been a volunteer with the Marr Residence since you were 8 years old or earlier than that, so that's amazing to see. As a young person, why did you want to get involved in the Marr Residence?
Well, what I've noticed is we end up looking at a lot of our heritage, such as the Broadway Bridge, and we don't acknowledge it, or we haven't been taking care of it, so it has to be demolished, or the Farnham block that wasn't being taken care of. And so I've noticed that because nobody's aware of these historical buildings or their significance. So if we can teach people about the Marr, like the Marr was a success story. It was going to be torn down, but the city purchased it. If we can share the success story and the value of heritage with young people and everybody really, and they can learn something from that, we can probably and perhaps save more of our buildings and build heritage, which is very important.
I love how passionate you are about this, Lauren, at such a young age. Lauren, let's talk a little bit about your look first.
Okay, so it was traditional for women to have long skirts. It even carried over to ballet. To be a ballerina was really scandalous back then. So they'd have really long skirts that would brush the floors. And you would like full sleeves, but you wouldn't want them to be too full, otherwise you have to be rolling them up for housework. So that's why they're a bit shorter. You would probably be more of a housewife. See, it's very simple, still very modest, and it fits loosely, so it's comfortable. And you have the apron to protect your dress, doing a lot of housework like scrubbing, cooking, cleaning, gardening, and all of that. This is, believe it or not, a wedding dress from 1872. It was actually Della's great-great-grandmother's wedding dress.
Isn't that cool?
Yes. So if you notice the dark color, that's very important, because if you came to the prairies, dirt, dust, everything, white wouldn't last very long. So the dark color helps to hide stains, and it's a very practical design. So you could use it for church or for tea parties afterwards. And the collar and the cuffs are interchangeable, as I said. Velvet for winter, lace for the summer. So it's very versatile, and you can use it over and over again.
Now, you did mention it. You could wear this to a garden party, and I know the Marr Residence here has a beautiful garden.
It really does.
Can you tell us a bit about the garden and the volunteer opportunities through the garden?
Well, we have a lot of summer programs for the garden. We have live musicians. There's the Marr Harvest Fair, where we do activities outside and play heritage games for the children.
Neat.
And we do have some volunteer opportunities for those. Special programs, and we also have, if you're a gardener, you could always contact Della and come in and do some work on the gardens. In the summer, there's so much color, it's just a riot, it's beautiful, and it's really worth it to go in and look at them or work on them yourself.
Fantastic, and you can go to themarr.ca for more information on how you can get involved with the Marr Residence. Lauren, I want to say a big thank you to you. Thank you so much for teaching us a little bit about Saskatoon's history, and we'll be right back after the break.
Creating local TV that matters to your community. Shaw TV, your local voice.
As we've learned on today's show, the field hospital that was set up inside the Marr Residence plays a significant role in Saskatoon's history, as this was the location that soldiers came to when wounded. But right now, we're going to take a look at a different nonprofit organization that is also providing medical care to Saskatoon's community. Here's more on Switch and its educational values.
So it's kind of like a tight squeeze.
Caitlin Meyerly, a second-year med student from the University of Saskatchewan's College of Medicine, is treating her patient at Saskatoon's Switch Wellness Center.
I think that it's really valuable for us as students because we get the opportunity to work with populations that we might not get to see every day in the hospital. And that's necessary because that's going to make us a lot more well-rounded. We're going to know how to communicate with people from different cultures, from different backgrounds.
Caitlin has been a volunteer at Switch for 2 years, working closely with professional healthcare mentors and students in a variety of fields, including physiotherapy, social work, nursing, and childcare.
Switch is an interdisciplinary health clinic run by students, managed by students. We want to kind of enhance the education of future professionals while we're helping out people in the community.
The students always go in first, and so myself and usually try to go in with a student of a different discipline, and so we'll go in together, get to like take a full history and talk with the patient, see what's going on with them, and then get to do a full physical as well, and so the hands-on is really great.
Perfect, 37.1, and that is just fine.
They learn to work with other disciplines, which you don't necessarily see during your training in medical school anyways. But in the hospital, when kids are admitted, it's difficult to forget the disease and think about the social situation. While I think that here, because of the multidisciplinary setting, because we're in the neighborhood that we're in, it's easier. We understand the effect of poverty and of other challenges that patients who come here have, for example, systemic racism or low education levels, addiction, etc., etc.
Being able to like receive that mentorship from physicians and like watching them interact with patients in like a very friendly environment where I'm not being quizzed or tested has like made it very comfortable to learn in, and I can apply that to patients that I'm going to see in the future, and hopefully that's going to make me a better physician.
And when students aren't with their mentors caring for community members, they can be found in the kitchen preparing small meals for patients and catching up on homework.
We see them grow and we see them learn and we see how well they're doing, but also it keeps us on our feet because they read a lot, they question a lot, so through them we also learn. So that's what I like about teaching.
Are you able to move the full range of motion of your ankle?
The hands-on training offered through Switch benefits the students, their mentors, and with newly extended hours, the clinic is now more accessible to those who need their services.
Members of the community can come in any Monday or Wednesday evening from 5:30 to 8. And also Saturdays from 12:30 to 3.
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm the shift supervisor tonight. How are you doing?
It's a great experience for those students, and they're not here just because of school. It's because they want to make a difference in the community.
Switch is run out of the Westside Community Clinic on 20th Street. To learn more, visit switchclinic.ca.
And then we're going to send some students in to come see you. But don't worry, no decisions are going to be made without a certified doctor.
From learning about one of the first families to inhabit Saskatoon to trying on traditional 1900s clothing, there is so much to see and learn here at the Marr House for community members when they visit this historic site. Don't forget, the Marr Residence has so many events coming up in the summer, including their potted plants on May 15th. To learn more, make sure you head to themarr.ca, or better yet, drop by the location at 326 11th Street, Sundays from 1 to 4 p.m. Thanks so much for joining us on today's Go on Shaw TV. I'm your host, Janella Hamilton. We'll see you next time.